Dream of the Red Chamber, Chapter 64.
We're talking about a funeral procession so loud, so massive, and frankly so incredibly expensive that it literally stops traffic in the capital city.
Right, it's the ultimate contrast. And that is exactly where we're living today. We're taking a deep dive into Chapter 64 of Dream of the Red Chamber.
And it's such a fascinating chapter because on the surface, it really just looks like a bridge chapter, right? We're dealing with the aftermath of Jia Jing's death. The Ning Mansion is in total chaos. But if you look closer, which is obviously what we're here to do, this text is actually a masterclass in social masking.
That is a great way to frame it. The gap between public duty and private desire. Because we have these three distinct stages in this text. You have the performative grief of the funeral, the high-stakes workplace politics of the maids, and then this secret private ritual that just breaks all the rules.
Exactly. And we have some incredible source material to unpack here. I was reading through the notes on the funeral procession itself, and the sheer scale of it is just, it's mind-boggling. It's the fourth day, the coffin is moving, and the text literally says the guests are swarming like clouds.
Yeah, and it's not just guests, right? It's a massive public spectacle. You have this procession stretching from the Iron Threshold Temple all the way back to the mansion. We are talking about tens of thousands of people lining the streets. And, you know, in a crowd that size, you inevitably get this sort of mob mentality.
Right, you get the gawkers, you get the jealous neighbors sighing at the wealth. But then you have this one specific group that the text explicitly calls out, the reading men.
Yes, the scholars in the crowd.
Yeah, the source calls them half-bottle vinegar scholars. And I have to admit, I stared at that phrase for a minute. I mean, it's evocative, but walk me through the insult. Why vinegar and why half a bottle?
It is such a brilliant burn from the author. So think about a bottle of liquid. If it's full to the brim, you can shake it, but it doesn't really make a sound. It's solid. It's stable.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But a bottle that is only half full, you shake that and it sloshes around. It makes a ton of noise. It's highly unstable. So calling someone a half-bottle vinegar scholar means they have just enough education to be loud and pretentious, but they don't have the actual wisdom to understand what they're seeing.
Oh, that is scathing.
Yeah.
So they're just standing there watching this massive funeral and basically hate watching it.
Pretty much, yeah. They're critiquing the luxuries, saying things like, oh, true funeral rites should be frugal, grief should be modest, this is all just a terrible waste. But at the exact same time, they're standing on their tiptoes trying to get a better look at all the gold and silver. It's public judgment in its purest form. They are projecting their own moral superiority onto a situation they are secretly desperate to be a part of.
Right. But the irony, and this is the part that really got me, is that they are judging the performance of the funeral. And the performance itself is, well, it's Oscar-worthy. Let's look at the chief mourners, Jia Zhen and Jia Rong.
Oh, publicly. They are the absolute picture of filial devastation. The etiquette rules are so strict here, they aren't allowed to sleep in beds. They are restricted by tradition to sleep on rough straw mats right by the coffin.
And not just straw mats. The text specifies they are using clods of earth for pillows. I mean, just imagine the neck pain. You're a wealthy aristocrat, you're accustomed to the finest silk, and you have to rest your head on a literal dirt clod.
Well, it's supposed to be painful. The physical suffering is basically the visible proof of your internal grief. If you look comfortable, society assumes you just aren't sad enough. It's completely performative suffering.
But here is the twist. The text implies that while they're performing this absolute agony for the crowds, they don't actually feel a thing.
Yeah, implies is definitely being generous there. The text flat out exposes them. It says they, quote, hated the hardship. They're miserable, sure, but not because of grief. They're just annoyed that they're uncomfortable. And the very second those guests leave and the doors close,
The mask comes completely off.
instantly, they abandon the straw mats, they toss the dirt pillows aside, they sneak off into the inner quarters to, as the text very politely puts it, mess around with their sisters-in-law and the concubines.
So the clod of earth is just a prop. It's entirely fake.
It's 100% a prop. And this dynamic really sets the stage for everything else in the chapter. The Ning Mansion is fundamentally a place where you perform your public duty just so you can get away with your private desires. It's hypocrisy, but it's highly organized hypocrisy. Everyone plays their part so the whole system keeps running.
And speaking of keeping the system running, we really have to mention Fengjie here. Because while the men are totally faking it, she is actually killing herself to keep things organized.
Right, exactly. Fengjie is genuinely ill. The text makes a real point of saying she hasn't recovered yet, she's physically compromised, but she forces herself to help Yushi manage the guests and the complex rituals anyway.
See, that feels so different than Jia Zhen's fake grief. She isn't doing it for a show, she's doing it for control, right?
Absolutely. She is the ultimate manager. Even when she's sick, she cannot let the side down. She adheres to the duty, not necessarily out of profound sadness for Jiajing, but out of this fierce, driving need to maintain order and uphold the family reputation. Because if the funeral management fails, it directly reflects on her competence.
Okay, so we have this chaotic, high-pressure, incredibly hypocritical environment at the funeral. Now, I want to pull us away from that, because the text does this beautiful, almost cinematic cut. We follow Bai leaving the Ning mansion, crossing back to his own residence, Yihongyuan.
And the vibe shift is just instant. You go from tens of thousands of people and all these wailing mourners to this lazy, quiet, intimate summer afternoon. The old women are napping out on the porch. The birds are probably chirping.
And Bao walks in, expecting peace and quiet, and almost gets completely tackled.
Right, yeah. Fengjie, the young actress who has turned into a maid, just comes barreling out and runs right into him. She's desperately fleeing from Kingwen.
I love this scene so much because it shows the hierarchy, or really the lack of it, when no one important is watching.
Here, gambling.
Playing with melon seeds.
They're playing a game with knuckle bones and melon seeds on the Kang. And Fengjie lost, and the punishment was a beating, playfully, of course, but she refused to take it and bolted.
But Bai just laughs it off. He physically shields her. He tells Kingwen, hey, spare her, she's small. It's this little protective bubble where the harsh rules of the outside world just don't apply.
Exactly, and just look at the banter. Kingwen teases Fengjie and calls her a fox spirit because she moves so fast. She jokes that even a summoned spirit couldn't vanish that quickly. It's light, it's fun. But in this novel, not everyone in that room is playing.
No, definitely not. Because while Kingwen and Fengjie are running around like kids, we have Zhuren, the head maid. Where is she during all this?
Well, Kingwen makes a crack about her, actually. She says Zhuren is in the inner room facing the wall like she's meditating. She basically calls her doctrinaire, or acting like a Zen master.
Which is pretty sharp for a lazy summer afternoon.
It's just Kingwen being Kingwen, as she's mocking Zhuren for being a killjoy, for being way too serious while everyone else is having fun. But when Bai actually goes into the inner room to find Zhuren, she isn't meditating at all. She's frantically working.
She's tying knots. She's making a tassel for a fan case. Now, I want to pause here for a second. Because to a modern listener, this sounds incredibly trivial. Oh, she's knitting him a sock, how nice. But you flag this as a major political moment in the household. Why does a fan case matter so much?
Because in the Jia household, objects are never just objects. They are direct indicators of status, competence, and care. Zhuren explicitly points out that Baiyu is currently wearing an old fan case, a black or blue one, which are mourning colors that was made years ago for a completely different funeral at the Ning mansion.
And Baiyu, just being Baiyu, is like, who cares? It still works. It holds the fan.
But Zhuren knows how dangerous that is. She explains that he is going to be seen by every single important person at this current funeral. It's a daily event now. If the old mistress, Grandmother Jia, sees him wearing a raggedy recycled fan case, she isn't going to blame Baiyu.
She's going to blame the maids.
Specifically, she will blame Zhuren as the head maid. She'll say, look at how lazy and neglectful these girls are. They let my precious grandson walk out in public looking like a beggar.
So this fan case isn't just a craft project. It's basically Zhuren's performance review.
Exactly. While Kingwen is playing tag, Zhuren is literally securing her job. She is engaging in that exact same public duty we just saw at the massive funeral, but for her, it's entirely about survival. She's anticipating the harsh judgment of the crowd before the crowd even arrives.
That is such a crucial distinction to make. It makes you realize that Zhuren isn't just being boring. She's the shield that allows the other girls to be fun. If she wasn't constantly worrying about things like the fan case, Kingwen wouldn't be able to safely play with melon seeds.
That really is the tragedy of Zhuren's character. She carries the entire mental load of that apartment. And speaking of care, did you catch the really specific detail about the tea they serve Baoyu?
Yes, I did. After all the chasing around, Fengjie brings Baoyu some tea. And the text goes out of its way to specify that it is cool water, not ice.
Right, and why is that tiny distinction so important?
Because Baoyu has a weak constitution. The source notes that they don't dare give him actual ice in the brutal summer heat because it might shock his system. So instead, they put the teapot into a bucket of well water to cool it down gently.
It is such a tender, specific detail. It shows that despite all the playfulness and the teasing, these maids are hyper-aware of his actual physical needs. They are managing his health with incredible precision. It's a profoundly different kind of service than the fake, performative grief of the men at the funeral.
Right, so Bayou has his cool tea, he has his laugh with the maids, and then he decides to head out again. But he doesn't go back to the funeral. He goes visit Lin Daiyu at the Xiaoshanguan.
And this leads us to perhaps the most poignant world in this text. We completely leave the hypocrisy of the funeral and the busy playfulness of the maids, and we enter a realm of absolute mystery and sorrow.
So Baoyu is crossing the Qinfang Bridge, and he spots Suan, who is Daiyu's maid. And this is where the detective story really begins, because she is carrying a very strange assortment of items.
Let's look at the evidence Baoyu sees. Suan has 2 old women following her, and they are carrying melons, lotus roots, and fresh fruit.
And Baoyu just stops cold, because he knows Daiyu better than anyone else in the world, and he instantly knows 2 things. 1, Daiyu has a very weak stomach and never eats cool foods like melon. And 2, she generally hates the smell of heavy incense.
But Suan admits to him that Daiyu has been rearranging her furniture. She ordered the heavy altar table moved to the outer room, and she specifically requested the long one, the dragon pattern tripod incense burner.
So Baoyu starts doing the math in his head. He looks at the calendar. Is it birthday? No. Is it standard holiday? No.
But then he remembers his classical texts. He quotes the Book of Rites, right? Autumn offers its seasonal food.
Yes. He realizes she is using the change of seasons, the autumn harvest, as a cover story. She is secretly setting up a private sacrifice.
For her parents, remember, Daiyu is an orphan living in her grandmother's house. Everyone else is over at the Ning Mansion, performing this loud, completely fake grief for Jia Jing. But Daiyu is here, completely alone, creating a private, hidden space to grieve her actual loss.
It's just such a lonely image, the smoke rising in that quiet room, the fruit laid out carefully, and Baoyu is standing outside the door, and he has a choice to make. And I honestly think this is one of his most mature moments in the entire book.
It really is. He basically runs a full simulation in his head. Option A, he bursts in, he says, Daiyu, what's wrong? Why are you burning incense and crying?
And if he does that, the whole thing stops. She has to quickly wipe her eyes, put up all her verbal defenses. Maybe she gets embarrassed. The ritual is ruined.
Exactly. The catharsis is broken. She's forced to put her public mask back on. But then there's option B. He could just walk away entirely and ignore it. But he can't do that either because he's deeply worried about her.
Worried about what exactly? Just her being sad.
More than that. In traditional Chinese medicine, there's this concept that extreme, unvented grief can stagnate the humor. Basically, the intense emotion gets stuck in your body and actually makes you physically sick.
And she is already so frail. So he's terrified she's going to cry herself into a literal coma or get physically ill from the sheer intensity of the sorrow if she's left entirely alone with it.
Right. So he comes up with option C. He decides to go visit Fengjie's house first. He intentionally buys her time. He lets her finish the cry, lets her get it fully out of her system.
He just lets her have the private moment.
Exactly. And then he plans to go back right when the ritual is wrapping up to act as the emotional safety net, to comfort her so she doesn't drown in the depression afterward.
That is surprisingly emotionally intelligent for a guy who is just, laughing at a maid running into him over a game of knucklebones.
It shows his incredible range. He can play the fool in the garden, he can play the dutiful mourner at the funeral, but with Daiyu, he's the guardian. He's the only one in this entire compound who respects her private desire to grieve, even when it directly conflicts with the rules of the house.
He validates her reality. In a world full of fake drama and highly political fan cases, he is the only one protecting something genuinely real.
Baiyu goes to check in on Fengjie. Now, usually, Fengjie is the Iron Lady of this house.
Oh, absolutely.
She is sharp, she's loud, she's terrifying. If you step out of line, she will crush you.
But here, she is completely depleted. The text actually paints this picture of her leaning against a door frame.
Just trying to hold herself up.
Yeah, propping herself up, talking to her aide, Pinger. She isn't sitting in a seat of power. She's physically and mentally drained.
And when Baoyu walks in, she doesn't put on a brave face at all. She just vents.
She basically says the house is falling apart.
She lists off fighting, gambling, theft. It's surprising how quickly the discipline just evaporates entirely because grandmother Jia isn't physically there to scare people.
Well, it shows you that the order of the Jia household isn't built on loyalty or even good systems.
Right.
It is built entirely on fear and presence. Now, Fengjie does mention that third sister, Tan Shun, is trying to help keep the peace.
But this is where we hit a really interesting cultural roadblock, right? Because Fengjie says Tan Chun is handicapped in her leadership because she's an unmarried young woman.
Yes.
I really wanted to ask you about that. Because Tan Chun is incredibly smart. She's super capable. Why does being unmarried stop her from just cracking the whip?
It's about this concept of leaving the pavilion. In this society, an unmarried daughter is supposed to be sheltered from the world.
Oh,
So there are certain ugly realities of life. Servants, gambling, sexual misconduct, graft, just the dirty details of how the sausage gets made.
right, the real world said.
Exactly. She isn't supposed to know about any of that. So the servants can effectively gaslight her.
Oh, that is so frustrating.
They know her authority is capped by her innocence. They can lie to her and say, oh, miss, that's just how things are done outside.
And she can't argue because she hasn't lived in the outside world yet.
Precisely. So Fengjie is left trying to hold back the tide all alone while she's sick.
And Bao Yu, being Bao Yu, he plays the comforter. He tells her to rest, not to worry so much.
He's very sweet about it.
He is, but he's also totally fleeing the stress. He leaves the management office and heads straight for his sanctuary, the garden, specifically Bamboo Lodge.
To see Dayu. And the vibe shift here is jarring.
Yeah.
We go from Fengjie complaining about these chaotic, noisy servants to absolute silence.
It's like stepping into a library after being at a construction site.
That's a great way to put it. The text focuses on sensory details here. Incense smoke fading, offerings of wine on the table.
Dayu has been mourning.
Yes. And this interaction between Baoyu and Dayu, if you want to understand why their relationship is so incredibly difficult, this is the scene to study.
It is painful to read. Bobby walks in, he sees she's been crying, and he tries to give her logical advice.
Right.
He tells her, essentially, stop crying, it's bad for your health.
Which is technically true.
But it's the absolute wrong thing to say.
It is. And this is where the author gives us a brilliant look at Bayu's internal paralysis. He wants to comfort her, but he's terrified of her sensitive and suspicious heart.
The phrase is Mei seen, right?
Yes, exactly.
Suspicious feels like a strong word, though. What does it mean in this specific context? Does she think he's up to something?
Not in a criminal sense, no. It means she is hypervigilant. She overanalyzes every micro-expression he makes.
Oh, okay.
She reads into the silence between words. And Bayu knows this, so he starts to speak, realizes he might sound insensitive, stops, panics that his silence is offending her, and then gets so overwhelmed by his own inability to communicate that he just bursts into tears.
He cries because he can't figure out how to talk to her.
He cries because the gap between how much he loves her and his ability to actually express it is just too wide. He is paralyzed by the fear of hurting her.
Wow.
And then Dayu, seeing him cry, realizes he's genuinely distressed for her sake, so she starts crying too.
It's a total feedback loop of anxiety. They're just spiraling together.
It really is, and it takes an outsider to snap them out of it. Purple Cuckoo, the maid, walks in with tea and basically says, "Are you two doing this again? You just got better."
Every relationship needs a purple cuckoo.
Truly.
She breaks the tension. Bao Yu wipes his face. He makes a joke about not daring to fight with her, and that's when he starts looking around the room.
And he finds something.
Right. He finds a stack of papers hidden under an inkstone.
The 5 beauties. This is the intellectual gold of the chapter right here.
So Dayu tries to snatch them back. Bao Yu hides them in his shirt, which is classic flirting, by the way. But then Bao Chai walks in.
And we get a proper literary seminar.
Yeah. So Dayu explains she was bored, and she was inspired by historical women who had admirable yet lamentable fates. Right. So she wrote 5 poems about them. But these aren't just your standard retellings, are they?
No, not at all. This is historical revisionism. Dayu is doing something very sophisticated here. She's taking the standard tragic beauty narratives that male historians wrote, and she's flipping them entirely on their heads.
She's looking at these women and saying, the history books got it wrong.
Exactly.
Let's break these down because the insights here are wild for the time period. The first one is about Shi.
Right.
For context for our listeners, she is essentially the Helen of Troy of China. She was a beauty sent to an enemy king to distract him so her own country could win a war.
And the traditional view is that she's a kingdom toppler.
Oh.
Or a tragic sacrifice for the greater good. It is all about the glory of her sacrifice.
But Daiyu writes, if she hadn't been sent to the palace, she would have just been an old woman washing silk by the stream.
She is completely deglamorizing it.
Yeah, she's basically saying, I would rather be an ugly old washerwoman alive in a village than a famous dead beauty queen.
Precisely. She is challenging the idea that being a tragic icon is a destiny actually worth having.
Right.
She values the simple, unburdened life over the glorious one.
Okay, then there's the poem about Ming Fei, also known as Wang Zhaojun.
Yes, this one is fascinating.
The story goes that she refused to bribe the court painter, so he painted her ugly.
Right.
The emperor saw the ugly picture and sent her away to marry a barbarian king. But later, the emperor saw the real her, realized she was gorgeous, and regretted it deeply.
Now, usually people blame the corrupt painter Mao Yanshu for being greedy.
Sure, that makes sense.
But listen to Daiyu's take. She asks, even if the king slighted your appearance, how can the power to give or take life be given to a painter?
Oh, wow. She's blaming the CEO, not the middle manager.
Exactly. She is critiquing the systemic failure. She's
Yeah.
asking, why is the emperor, the son of heaven, letting a doodle decide the fate of his subjects? And we want to be clear here, this is Daiyu's perspective, this sort of critique of superficial leadership. She shifts the blame from the small corruption, the painter asking for a bribe, to the ultimate authority who created a system where a painting matters more than a person.
That is so bold. It's almost political sedition hidden inside a poem about a pretty girl.
It really is.
Okay, what about the poem for Erjie? She was the consort of the overlord Yang Yu, and when he was defeated, she committed suicide with his sword.
Typically, that's painted as a very sorrowful, I can't live without you kind of moment. A pathetic, tragic end.
But Daiyu reframes it.
She reframes it as an act of mercy for herself. She implies that dying by the sword was better than sitting in the tent, meaning it was better than watching her hero get humiliated or captured.
So she's saying, I'm checking out on my own terms.
Yes. She praises the suicide as a way to preserve her own dignity and her image of him. It's almost samurai-esque. It's about honor and agency, not just sadness.
There's another one about Luzu, a concubine who jumped off a building to her death rather than be taken by a rival.
And Daiyu calls this stubborn luck.
Stubborn luck.
That's such a fascinating phrase.
Yeah.
She frames the suicide as a way to cure loneliness. By dying for him, she creates a bond that transcends death. It's a very Gothic view of loyalty that through this extreme act, she secures her place forever.
Wow. And finally, let's touch on Hong Fu. She is the female hero.
Yes.
She ran away from a powerful minister to be with a poor man because she saw his potential.
This is the poem of agency. Daiyu praises her giant eye, her ability to spot greatness. She celebrates Hong Fu for refusing to be shackled in the minister's tent and actually choosing her own partner.
So if we look at all these together, preferring a simple life over fame, blaming the emperor for systemic failures, choosing death over humiliation, and choosing your own partner, this is a manifesto.
It's a massive window into Daiyu's soul. She identifies with these women not as victims, but as agents of their own fate.
Right.
She values clear-sightedness and integrity over mere survival. She is saying, I see the world clearly, and I reject the roles you've assigned to us.
But then we get the check and balance. Bao Chai?
Yes.
Baiyu thinks these poems are genius. He's practically drooling over them. But what is Baochai's reaction?
Well, Bao Chai is fascinating here because she represents societal norms. She immediately warns them. She quotes the famous proverb, a woman without talent is virtuous.
It sounds like she's telling Daiyu to dumb it down.
It definitely sounds that way. She argues that poetry is fine as a bedroom hobby, but if these writings get out to the men or the scholars, it's improper. She says they should focus on needlework and chastity.
And obviously we're just conveying her stance here, this very traditional worldview she held.
Exactly. And this is key, she doesn't stop there.
Right, she actually compliments the poems, doesn't she?
She does. She calls them novel and original. She notes that good poetry must flip ancient meanings. And she even compares Daiyu to famous male scholars like Wang Junggong and Ouyang Zhu, who did similar revisionist history.
So she's basically saying, you shouldn't be doing this, it's dangerous, but damn, you are really good at it. It shows Bao Chai's struggle. She is intellectually brilliant enough to appreciate Daiyu's genius, but she's disciplined enough to know that genius is a liability for a woman in their position.
She's acting as the gatekeeper of safety.
She tries to suppress the talent to protect the girl, yes.
And Baoyu.
He ignores the warning completely. He grabs a pen and titles the collection 5 Beauties.
He just wants to celebrate them.
He represents pure appreciation. He ignores the social consequences entirely. He just loves that Dayu is brilliant.
But just as they are having this high-level literary debate, this beautiful moment of intellectual connection, reality comes crashing back in.
The Home Alone period ends.
The bubble pops. Someone announces that Lian Fengjie's husband has returned.
Which signals the return of male authority to the household management.
And then the next day, Grandmother Jia and Madame Wang arrive. And we shift from this quiet intellectual garden back to the heavy physical reality of the funeral.
Right.
And the description of the grandmother's return is surprisingly gritty. It is not a happy reunion with hugs and kisses.
No, it's physically punishing. The text describes cries shaking the sky. You have to remember, this is performative mourning, but it's also genuine grief.
Right.
Grandmother Gia is elderly. She sees the coffin, she sees her grandsons, and she just breaks down.
And then she gets sick. It isn't just, oh, she's tired. It sounds like a medical emergency.
It is a medical emergency. The text details a headache, a stuffy nose, her voice getting heavy.
Wow.
In a household this dependent on the matriarch, a fever isn't just a fever. It is a destabilizing event. If she dies, the whole structure changes.
So the whole house goes into panic mode.
Complete panic mode until the third watch of the night.
That's when she finally sweats and the fever breaks.
Right, her pulse becomes quiet and her body cools. Okay, let's shift scenes. Imagine this scenario. You're at a funeral.
And a really high-stakes one, right?
Right. A high-stakes, somber national event. The atmosphere should be entirely heavy with grief and protocol. But there's a catch.
There's always a catch.
Exactly. The powerful matriarchs of the family, the women who usually, keep the moral compass spinning and keep the boys in check, they're sick.
They're stuck at home.
Yeah, leaving the men completely unsupervised. And instead of mourning, they are plotting.
Oh, heavily plotting. We're talking a forbidden romance, a secret stash of embezzled funeral money, and this really twisted bro-code conversation between an uncle and his nephew.
Which sounds like a favor, but is actually one of the most cynical traps in literature.
It really is. It's the perfect storm of bad decisions. We're looking at a classic setup where, as the text famously puts it, lust makes wisdom faint.
I love that phrase. I mean, it's massive, and we're zooming in on a very specific slice of Chapter 64. And look, if you think modern prestige TV drama is messy...
Oh, the Jia clan has them beat by a mile.
Easily.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating about this specific excerpt is that on the surface, it's boring.
Right, it starts with logistics.
Yeah. Funeral expenses, spreadsheets, silver tails, but underneath that dry bureaucratic layer, we see the absolute moral rot of this family exposed in real time. Lian, who is usually portrayed as pretty street smart and capable, gets completely played.
Played by his own nephew, Jiarong.
Yeah, we need to pay really close attention to the power dynamics here, because this isn't just about romance, it's about hierarchy, deception, and the lengths men will go to when they think no one is watching.
Specifically when the women aren't watching.
Exactly.
So let's set the scene properly. We're at the Iron Threshold Temple. It's the funeral period for Jiajing.
He was the head of the Ning Mansion, but spent his life trying to become an immortal Taoist.
Right, but now he's dead.
Yeah.
And the family is dealing with the fallout. Now, for you listening who might not be deep in the lore, normally the women run the show in the Jia household.
Very much so.
You have the grandmother, Jia mother, and the terrifyingly competent Wang Shifeng, who's also known as Fengjie.
But the text tells us they're out of the picture right now. Jia mother isn't fully recovered from the shock of the death.
And Fengjie is sick too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, she's dealing with a miscarriage and just general fatigue. So they aren't at the temple. It's just the men.
Which means trouble.
Total trouble.
Yeah.
You've got Jia Zhen, the current head of the Ning Mansion, his son Jia Rong, and their cousin from the Rong Mansion, Jia Lian.
I always find the geography a little confusing. But essentially you have the East Mansion and the West Mansion.
Right. And right now, the cousins are mixing.
And without the police around, meaning the wives and the grandmother, the boys are playing. Or, well, Jilin is pining.
Pining hard.
He is obsessed with the Yu sisters. Second sister Yu Erjie and third sister Yu Sanji. They're staying to help out.
The dynamic between them is so crucial here. The text explicitly mentions that third sister is cold.
She gives him absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all. She sees right through these men. But second sister, Yu Erjie, she's interested.
She's responsive.
Yeah, and in a society this rigid, a responsive glance is basically a billboard saying, I'm available.
But Lian has a problem. He's got the urge, but he has zero opportunity. There are servants everywhere, eyes everywhere, and he's terrified of his cousin Jia Zhen getting jealous because, let's be honest, Jia Zhen is a predator himself.
Oh, absolutely. So Lian is stuck in this state of just lusting from a distance.
That's a pressure cooker.
It is. He's frustrated. And usually this is where nothing happens. But then this very mundane administrative problem cracks the door open.
And this is what I love about Dream of the Red Chamber. The drama almost always stems from the household accounts.
It really does.
Okay, so let's unpack the money problem because it feels just like a modern corporate issue. A steward named Yu Lu comes in with a spreadsheet, basically. What's the damage?
It's a deficit. Yulu reports that the funeral costs, and we're talking the temporary tents, the musicians, the specific mourning clothes required by protocol.
All the heavy ritual stuff.
Exactly. It all came to 1,110 taels of silver. They've paid 500, but they still owe 610 taels.
Just to give you some context, because taels can sound really abstract, how much money is that really?
It's a huge amount. A regular servant in this household might earn 1 or 2 taels a month.
Wow.
Yeah, a middle-class family could live for an entire year on 20 taels. So a 600-tael deficit is massive. It's tens of thousands of dollars in today's purchasing power.
And the creditors are literally knocking at the temple door. But the treasury is empty. I mean, funerals are expensive, sure, but this is a very wealthy family.
The treasury is tapped out because cash flow in these aristocratic families was often terrible.
They were asset-rich but cash-poor.
Exactly. Land-rich and status-rich, but they spent money way faster than it came in. So Jia Zhen, the head of the house, is trying to solve this on the fly.
He remembers that the Zhen family of Jian Yan sent 500 taels as a funeral offering.
Right. So he tells his son, Jiarong, go get that 500 taels and pay the bill.
Simple solution. Problem solved.
You'd think so.
But then comes the complication. Jiarong says, well, actually, Dad, we already spent 200 of that.
Which just implies they're burning through cash constantly.
And the remaining 300 taels, they aren't in the vault. Rong says he had them sent to the sister's mother, Yu Laonyang, for safekeeping.
This is the catalyst right here. This is the exact moment Lian has been waiting for.
He's just standing there listening to them discuss this missing 300 taels, and he sees an opening.
He jumps right in. He says, hey, no big deal. I have some silver I haven't used yet. I'll cover the difference.
It's such a transparent move. Think about it. Lian is known for being careful with his money. Why would he volunteer his own personal slush fund to cover his cousin's debts?
Because he attaches a condition. He says, I must go personally to fetch the 300 taels from the mother.
He's effectively buying a ticket to see second sister. He knows the mother and the sisters are staying together.
He even piles on all these virtuous excuses to cover his tracks. He tells Jia Zhen, oh, I also need to go check on the family, pay my respects to the matriarchs.
So convenient.
Yeah, and Jia Zhen buys it, or at least he accepts it. He thinks, great, problem solved, and my cousin is doing the legwork. He even tells Rong to go with him.
So the uncle-nephew saddle up and ride into the city. And this brings us to what I honestly think is the most dangerous horseback ride in the entire book.
Oh, definitely.
This conversation between Lian and Rong changes everything. It starts innocently enough, right? Just two guys riding home.
It does. They're just chatting, but Lian starts gushing about second sister. He literally can't help himself.
He's praising her conduct, her gentleness.
And then he says, everyone says your aunt, meaning his own wife, Fengjie is great, but she doesn't hold a candle to second sister.
That is a massive statement.
Yeah.
We really need to pause on Fengjie for a second. In the world of this novel, she is a titan.
An absolute powerhouse.
She's brilliant, she's beautiful, she effectively runs the clan. But she is also incredibly jealous and vindictive.
Very.
Comparing a potential mistress to her favorably, that's dangerous talk. It shows just how far gone Lian is.
It's totally reckless, but he's clearly smitten. He's painting this picture of domestic bliss that he doesn't have with Fengjie. And then Jiarong, the nephew, just drops a bomb.
What does he say?
He says, Uncle, if you love her so much, why don't I act as a matchmaker? Why don't you take her as your second chamber?
Okay, definition time for us. Second chamber. Because we aren't talking about a mistress you hide in a hotel. What's the legal status here?
A second chamber is essentially a concubine, or a secondary wife. In this era, in this specific social stratum, it was legal and socially acceptable for a man of Lian's status to have one.
Especially if the primary wife had no son.
Exactly. She would have real rights, her children would be legitimate heirs. It's a formal position within the household hierarchy.
So Rong is proposing a formal union. He's telling them to put a ring on it, essentially. But there are massive obstacles here, and watching them dismantle these obstacles is just It's disturbing how easy they make it sound. Let's list them.
Let's do it.
Obstacle number 1. She's already engaged.
Yes. Rong casually admits that second sister was finger-betrothed to the Zhang family.
Finger-betrothed? That sounds really ancient.
It means they were betrothed while still in the womb.
Wow.
The parents made a pact before the kids were even born. It's a very old-school binding contract. The Zhang family used to manage an imperial farm, so they were respectable people.
But they aren't doing so well anymore, are they?
Not at all. They lost a lawsuit and went completely bankrupt. So Rong suggests a very brutal solution.
It really does.
He says, look, they're poor now. Give them 10 or 20 taels of silver and force them to sign an annulment paper. They'll take the money because they're desperate, and they won't dare fight us because we're the powerful Jia family.
It's classic bullying. Here's $20, go away. It really shows how little they care about the rules or honor when the rules are inconvenient.
They're just weaponizing their class status against a poor family.
Exactly. But obstacle number 2 is much scarier than a bankrupt fiancé. Obstacle number 2 is Wang Shifeng, Jia Lian's wife.
This is the real hurdle. Lian is terrified of her. She's known for being totally ruthless with Lian's other flings.
There's that incident earlier in the book with a servant named Pinger and another woman.
Yeah, let's just say Fengjie does not share power. If he brings a pretty secondary wife home, Fengjie will effectively eat her alive. The household isn't big enough for both of them.
So what is Wrong's solution? Because this is where the conspiracy really deepens. He doesn't suggest facing Fengjie at all.
No, Rong suggests the secret house strategy. He says, don't bring her home. Instead, buy a house outside the main mansion compound. Furnish it, staff it with your own people, and keep her there.
Deep storage, like setting up a separate life entirely.
Exactly. He says, deep in a separate courtyard, how would Fengjie know? He tells Lian to literally live in 2 places.
And if it eventually comes out?
Well, by then, the rice is already cooked, as the saying goes.
The rice is cooked, meaning it's too late to undo it. And he gives Lian a cover story, too. He says, if you get caught, just say you did it for the sake of an heir. Because Fengjie hasn't given Lian a son yet.
And that's the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card in this patriarchal society. If you claim it's for the lineage, the wife technically cannot object without looking like she wants the family line to end.
It weaponizes Confucian duty against her.
Precisely.
It's a very calculated plan. It bypasses the legal engagement, it bypasses the terrifying wife, and it uses patriarchal duty as a shield. And Jia Lian, he eats it up.
The text says his heart flowers opened.
He's so happy he's acting like an idiot. He's just smiling blankly on his horse.
But here is where we need to pause and look at the subtext. Because to you listening, and certainly to Jia Lian, this looks like a nephew doing his uncle a solid favor.
I see you like this girl. Let me help you get her. It looks like camaraderie.
But we have to remember who Jia Rong is and who his father, Jia Zhen, is. The source material is very explicit about their reputation in the Ning Mansion.
The text mentions the gathering of stags, right? Which sounds almost noble, but it really isn't.
Not at all. It's a polite euphemism for their chaotic, incestuous mess. Jia Zhen and Jia Rong have a reputation for sharing women. And the text reveals right here in this section that they have already been messing around with these sisters.
So wait, if Rong is already having an affair with second sister, why would he want his uncle to marry her? Wouldn't that end his fun? Usually you don't want your uncle marrying your girlfriend. That seems wildly counterproductive.
And that is the twist. It's the darker motive that Lian completely misses. Rong wants Lian to marry her and put her in a secret house outside the compound.
Why?
Because right now, she is in the main Ning mansion. It's crowded. Rong is under his father's eye. There are servants. There are rituals. It's really hard to find privacy.
But if she is in Lian's private secret house...
and Lian has to go home to his wife or deal with business, then Rong can visit whenever he wants.
Wow.
He's setting up a situation where he can continue his affair with her, conveniently funded and housed by his uncle, while his uncle is away.
Okay, let's just sit with that. It's a massive betrayal dressed up as a favor. He's encouraging his uncle to commit bigamy, risk financial ruin, and enrage his wife, just so he has a convenient Airbnb for his hookup.
Precisely. The text says explicitly, Rong was not well-intentioned. He wanted to create a situation to ghost mix, that's the literal translation, or fool around, when Lian was absent. It is purely parasitic.
It's incredibly cynical. And Jillian has no clue he's actually thanking Rong.
He is. He's effusive. He promises to buy Rong 2 absolute beauty servant girls as a reward.
Thanks for letting me marry your mistress. Here are 2 servant girls.
The commodification of people here is just staggering. They're trading human beings like Pokemon cards.
It is, and it highlights the theme the author brings up repeatedly. Lust makes wisdom faint. Lian is not a stupid man, usually. He handles the family business, he travels, he negotiates with officials.
But here, he is ignoring so many red flags. Let's list the taboos he is breaking, because it's not just about his wife. It's worse than just cheating.
First, the mourning period. His uncle Jing just died. They are in the middle of national and familial mourning.
You are absolutely not supposed to be getting married.
No music, no celebrating during this time. It's a huge breach of filial piety. It could technically get him in legal trouble with the state, not just the family. He could actually lose his rank.
Right, so he's breaking the law there.
Second, stopping the wife to remarry. Taking a second wife in secret while the first is alive and unaware is socially precarious.
And third, the risk of his father, Jie, finding out. His father is strict and old-fashioned. If he knew Lian was doing this during a funeral, the consequences would be severe.
So Lian pushes all of this, the mourning, the laws, the father, the wife, to the back of his mind, as the text says. He is completely blinded by the prospect of possessing second sister.
It's amazing how quickly the plan comes together. They haven't even reached the city yet, and the deal is done. They arrive at the Ning mansion, and Rong gives him one last piece of advice before they act.
He warns him, right?
He does. He says, when you see second aunt today, don't be too hasty or impatient. If you cause a scene, it'll be hard to handle later.
Which is rich, coming from him. Keep it cool, uncle. Don't ruin my setup.
Exactly. And Lian is like a puppy. He agrees to wait outside while Rong goes in to clear the way, which means getting the silver and prepping the mother to sell her daughter into this secret arrangement.
On the surface, it reads like a romance story.
Right.
You have a wealthy nobleman and a beautiful woman. But if you look closer, it's actually a breakdown of how power works.
Right.
It's about how money and influence can just completely distort reality, how it breaks contracts and buys silence.
It's high-stakes poker, but with marriage vows.
Oh.
So, before we get to the juicy details, and trust me, there are some very specific, slightly scandalous details coming up.
Right.
We need to set the stage. Who are the main players in this disaster?
So at the center of the storm, you have Lian. He's a nobleman of the Rongo house. He's handsome. He's incredibly wealthy. But the absolute most important thing you need to know about his character is that he is terrified of his wife.
Ah, yes. The famous Phoenix. Wang Shifeng.
Right, Phoenix. She is a force of nature. She manages the massive household. She controls the finances. And she is famously, ruthlessly jealous. She destroys rivals. So Lian is basically living in a golden cage of his own making.
He wants a mistress.
Desperately. But he knows if Phoenix signs out, it is World War III.
Right. Okay, so then we have the object of his affection, Yu, Erjie, or second sister Yu.
Yes, she's currently staying in the Ning mansion. That's the other branch of the family with her mother and her sister.
Yeah.
She's beautiful, obviously, but the text gives us these subtle hints early on that she's a bit passive.
Passive how?
She's someone who tends to just go with the flow, even when the river is heading straight toward a waterfall. She doesn't really take charge of her own destiny.
Okay, got it. And finally, the third wheel who makes this whole thing happen, Jiarong, the nephew.
The broker.
Yes.
He's the younger generation. Basically chaotic energy personified. He's the one out there greasing the wheels to make this illicit affair happen, mostly because he just seems to really enjoy the drama of it all.
Okay, so the stage is set. We have a fearful husband, a passive beauty, and a chaotic nephew. Let's get right into the scene. It starts with Lian walking into the Ning mansion, and the text notes something super interesting right away. He doesn't wait to be announced.
Yeah, that is a crucial detail to start with. In these high noble houses, protocol is literally everything. There are layers of gates, servants, waiting rooms.
You can't just wander around.
Yeah, you don't just waltz into the inner chambers where the women live, but Lian does.
He just walks right in.
Walks straight in. And it establishes two things immediately for the reader. First, his intimacy with his cousin Jia, the master of that house. They are very close. But second, it shows his massive entitlement. He feels at home there. He feels he owns the space.
Right, and because he skips the protocol, he finds Yu Erjie alone. Well, I mean, her maids are there, but her mother and that sharp-tongued sister of hers are out back. So this is his moment. And what follows is, well, it's a scene involving a beetle nut that I think we really need to unpack. Because to a modern ear, this sounds a little bizarre. Walk us through this. Lian asks her for a beetle nut.
Right. So chewing betel nut was a very common habit back then, sort of like gum or tobacco. So he walks and sees her and asks if she has any. It's a completely mundane question on the surface. But Erjie plays the role of the modest woman perfectly here. She says she has some, but she claims, quote, "I never give mine to anyone to eat."
She's drawing a line, saying, you know I'm a proper lady. I don't share personal items.
Exactly. She's establishing a firm boundary of propriety. But then, and this is the key, she tosses the pouch to him.
She throws it.
Yeah, she refuses to hand it to him directly because that would involve physical contact, right?
Right.
But she throws the object. It's a very mixed signal. She's basically saying, I won't touch you, but here is my deeply personal item.
And here's where it gets really interesting, and honestly to me a little gross, but clearly it worked for them. So Lian catches the pouch, he empties it out, and he doesn't just take a fresh piece.
No. No, he finds a piece that was already half-eaten. A piece she had been chewing on and put back in the pouch.
And he eats it.
He eats the leftover halves.
Yeah.
And then he just casually puts the rest of the fresh ones in his own pocket.
I mean, let's just pause there. That is a bold choice.
It's an incredibly intimate and really aggressive signal. You have to remember, you're in a society where men and women are strictly segregated. Eating something that has literally been in her mouth is essentially a physical act. It breaches that barrier completely.
Wow.
He's consuming her leftovers. He's telling her, I want to be as close to you as physically possible. And he's doing this right in front of her maids.
It's almost like marking territory.
It is. He's betting that those servants won't dare speak up.
Mm-hmm.
And then he decides to escalate the situation. Because he still has her pouch, which is tied to her green handkerchief, he decides he's not just taking the nuts, he's making a trade.
Right, he pulls out something of his own. The text calls it a 9-dragon jade pendant.
Specifically Han Jade.
Which means it's expensive.
Oh yeah, this isn't some trinket you buy at a market stall.
Right.
This is a high-value status symbol worn at the waist. And the 9-dragon motif implies intense masculinity and power. So he unties this highly valuable object from his own body and ties it to her handkerchief.
And he tosses it back?
He waits until the maids aren't looking or, pretending not to look and tosses it back to her. Now, this is the moment of truth. This is the art of the secret affair in action. What does Erjie do?
Right, because if she hands it back, she's rejecting him. She's saying, sir, you dropped this, take it back. If she picks it up and smiles, she's openly agreeing to a proposition that breaks every single rule in the book.
Precisely. So she chooses the third option, plausible deniability.
Ah!
She pretends she doesn't see it fall. She just lets it lie there on the ground. She doesn't react at all.
Like, oh, is there priceless jade on the floor? I hadn't noticed.
Exactly. But later, when the rest of the family comes back into the room, the text tells us the handkerchief and the pendant are gone.
She took it.
She took it.
Yeah.
The contract is sealed right there.
Yeah.
No words were spoken. No marriage broker was officially hired, yet no parents were consulted. But they are now completely engaged in an affair. They've exchanged tokens.
It's fascinating how the text uses these physical objects to replace dialogue. The nut, the jade, it's so much louder than words. But just as this silent deal goes down, the vibe in the room shifts completely. The mother, Yulo Onyang, and that fierce third sister come back.
And suddenly, Lian has to snap right back into polite cousin mode.
Yeah.
It's such a great contrast. A second ago, he was literally eating her leftover betel nut, and now he's sitting up straight, discussing silver, asking about family business, talking about finances.
It totally grounds the reader. It reminds us that this isn't some isolated fairy tale. It's happening in the middle of a very busy, highly functional household.
Yes.
And speaking of business, this is where the nephew Jiarong enters the chat, and the dynamic shifts again.
Jiarong is such a distinct character. He comes in with this frantic, playful energy. He's teasing his aunts. He's hinting at things. He knows exactly what's going on. He's the catalyst.
Yeah.
He's the one who actually verbalizes the plan, right? Because after he and Jillian leave the women, they hatch the actual plot. The problem isn't getting Erjie to agree. They've already done that with the Jade. The problem is the wife at home.
Phoenix is the wall they have to climb over. Because if Jillian just brings a concubine home, Phoenix will metaphorically and perhaps literally destroy them. She absolutely does not tolerate rivals. So Lian and Jiarong come up with a second chamber strategy.
Basically setting up a burner apartment.
So Rong to see his dad.
Yeah.
And this interaction is fascinating because he doesn't just barge in and pitch this massive illegal plan. He starts with paperwork.
Yes. This is step one of the manipulation. I like to call it the lull.
The lull.
He reports on completely mundane logistics first. He says, oh, I gave the silver to the stewards. And Grandma G is feeling better. She actually stopped taking her medicine.
Why do you think he starts there? Just to look busy.
He's establishing competence. He is actively lowering his father's defenses by showing that he's a good, responsible son who handles the family business.
Ah, I see.
If he just ran in and said, hey, let's commit a massive family crime, his father might hesitate. But by normalizing the conversation with boring details first, he creates this rhythm of agreement.
Right, so the father, Jia Zhen, is just nodding along. Good job, son.
Yeah.
Silver is delivered, grandma is fine, and then bam, wrong pivots.
He pivots right to the topic of his uncle Lian. Now we know, and the characters know, that Lian has been eyeing you, Erjie. There is a lot of lust there.
Oh, definitely.
But Rom doesn't pitch this to his dad as a romantic hookup. He pitches it as a practical solution to a family problem.
He uses the heir argument.
Exactly. He brings up difficulties with heirs, which in a Confucian society is the ultimate trump card. Lian has no son. Therefore, taking a second wife isn't just a selfish desire. It is a moral duty.
That is so manipulative, framing lust as a moral responsibility.
It works perfectly.
But then he adds another layer that I thought was really clever. He uses a very specific phrase, "Qin Sheng Zua Kan."
Family acting as family, or adding kinship to kinship.
What does that actually mean in practice for them?
It's the argument that since Yu Erjie is already related by marriage, being the stepsister of Jia Zhen's wife, bringing her into the wrong house is safer than bringing in a total stranger.
Because a stranger is a wild card.
Exactly. A stranger might fight with the other wives. A stranger might steal. Family is quote-unquote safe.
Which is painfully ironic considering the absolute chaos this is about to unleash.
Completely.
But here's the part where I got really stuck in the text. The source explicitly says that Jia Rong tells his father that Uncle Lian begged him to propose this idea.
Yes, he does.
But the narrator, the omniscient voice of the book, tells us straight up he did not say it was his own idea. Rong is lying to his dad. He is totally framing his uncle. Why do that? Why not take credit for this brilliant problem solving?
You have to think about the stakes here. They are plotting to hide a marriage from Wang Shifeng.
Right, the Phoenix.
If Shifeng finds out, and she has eyes everywhere, there will be hell to pay. By attributing the original request to Jia Lian, Rong completely insulates himself.
He makes himself just the messenger.
Exactly. If Shifeng eventually screams at him, he can just throw his hands up and say, I was just helping Uncle Lian. He begged me. I'm just a dutiful nephew doing what I'm told.
Wow.
He is shifting the legal and social liability before the crime is even committed.
That is incredibly slippery. It makes him seem way less like a bored kid and much more like a chaotic, sociopathic strategist.
It's pure self-preservation disguised as helpfulness.
Okay, so he pitches this flawlessly to his dad, Jia Zhen. Now, Jia Zhen is the patriarch of the Ning house. He's the older generation. You would really expect him to be the brakes on this car.
You would.
You'd expect him to say, son, hiding a wife from the Phoenix is a literal death wish. Let's not do this.
But he doesn't. He listens to the whole plan. The heir issues, the family ties, the absolute secrecy. And his response is basically, actually, that's fine.
Actually, that's fine. That's his response to a family-destroying conspiracy.
His only hesitation is purely procedural. He just asks, is the girl willing? And then he tells Rong to go get approval from Erjie's mother, Yulao Niaming.
He treats it like a real estate transaction.
He really does. As long as the paperwork gets signed, he doesn't care at all about the morality or the massive danger they are putting everyone in.
But surely someone in the room has a brain, right? What about Yushi? This is Jia Zhen's wife. She's right there in the household.
She is. And to her credit, she does object.
Oh, she does.
Immediately. When she hears the plan, she tries to shut it down. She flat out says it's improper. Because she knows Shifeng better than these men do. She knows you cannot keep a secret of this magnitude in the Jia household.
So why does she fail? She's the lady of the house. Can't she just veto her husband?
This is where we have to look closely at the family structure again. She is Erjie's sister, yes, but they have different mothers. Erjie is the daughter of Yulao Niang, the stepmother.
Ah, so there's a biological distance there.
A massive social and biological distance. If Yushi fights too hard to stop this marriage, what does it look like to the rest of the family?
I guess it looks like she's jealous.
Exactly. It looks like the wealthy, established older sister is maliciously trying to block her poor younger sister from marrying into massive wealth. It looks petty and cruel.
Oh, she's trapped.
She is. So faced with her husband's total indifference and this really awkward family dynamic, she just loses her nerve. The text says she steps aside and basically lets them make a scene.
She just washes her hands of the whole thing.
She complies, and that's a tragedy in itself. The one person who actually sees the cliff edge is silenced by propriety.
So the internal hurdles are cleared. Dad is on board. Mom is silenced. Now Jiarong has to go sell this absolute nightmare to the bride's family.
And this is where the sales pitch gets, I want to say dark, but it's presented so cheerfully by Jiarong. He goes back to the mother to sell this marriage.
And he lies. He lies spectacularly.
What exactly is the pitch?
Well, he knows the mother, Yuloniang, is deeply worried about security. She doesn't want her daughter to just be a disposable mistress forever. So Jiarong tells her that Phoenix Lian's current highly powerful wife is sick.
Which she isn't.
Not in the fatal sense he implies no. He tells them she, quote, cannot get well. He plants this idea that Phoenix is on death's door. He tells the mother, look, we'll hide Erjie in a secret house for a year or so, and once Phoenix dies, Erjie will be officially promoted to the main wife.
Wow. So he is selling a future promotion based entirely on the anticipated death of a woman who isn't even really dying.
Exactly. It's the big lie. He tells them it's a necessary secret right now because of a, quote, difficulty with heirs, claiming they desperately need a son and that once the coast is clear, Erjie will be the lady of the massive Rongo house. He promises the mother complete retirement security, says Lian is a young, wealthy nobleman, much better than anyone else they could ever find.
It's predatory pragmatism. He knows exactly what buttons to push. Status, security, and a permanent solution to their poverty.
And it completely works. The mother is convinced. The text even mentions she's swayed because Lian is, quote, 10 times better than the alternative.
Okay, speaking of the alternative, we have to talk about the loose end. Because Erjie wasn't exactly free to marry, was she?
No, she wasn't. And this is where the story shifts abruptly from a romantic scheme to just a raw display of class power. Erjie was already betrothed.
To a guy named Zhanghua.
Right, Zhanghua. Now, his family used to be important. His grandfather was a royal grain manager, but they've fallen on really hard times. They're essentially destitute now. But the engagement to Erjie was from when they were both children, so it's a legally binding contract.
So you have a legal engagement standing directly in the way of this secret affair. How does the great Jia family handle this? Do they ask nicely? Do they go to court?
Hardly. They use what the text literally calls the flames of power. They summon Zhanghua and his father to the mansion. Just picture the scene here. Two poor men being dragged into the massive, intimidating compound of the city's most powerful family.
It's pure intimidation, plain and simple.
It is. They force Zhanghua to sign a document breaking the engagement. They literally press him to do it.
And they give him a payout right to make it go away.
20 taels of silver.
20 taels. Is that a lot in this context?
No. It's a pittance for a wife.
Yeah.
It's a dismissal fee. It's just enough to say they paid him so they can't legally be accused of theft, but it's completely insulting. The mother hands him the money, and the engagement is voided. And this is so important because it shows the listener the actual foundation of this romance. It's built entirely on bullying. They crush this poor family just because they can, just to clear the path for Lian's lust.
It really highlights that collateral damage concept. Zhanghua didn't do anything wrong. He just existed in a space that Lian suddenly wanted.
Exactly. And notice the sheer efficiency of it. Once Zhanghua is out of the way, the logistics move incredibly fast. Lian doesn't waste a single second.
Right. He goes and buys a house.
Specifically, the text notes he buys a house in Little Huazi Lane.
Does the location matter?
Yeah.
Because the notes mention it's 2 lines away from the Ning and Longstruth.
Oh, the geography is heavily symbolic. 2 lines is about a kilometer, maybe a bit less. It's close enough to visit easily. He can slip away, visit his second chamber, and be back in time for dinner at the main house. But it's far enough away to be totally outside the immediate sphere of the main household. It's a golden cage.
He goes all out, though. 20 rooms.
20 rooms. He hires servants, a couple named Bel-Ur and his wife. He buys all new furniture, curtains, everything you would need for a proper grand wedding.
It creates this total illusion of domestic bliss. If you were Erjie walking into a freshly furnished 20-room house with your own servants after living in poverty, it must feel like you've completely made it.
That is exactly the trap. It feels like a marriage. It looks like a marriage. They even consult an almanac and pick a yellow road lucky day the 3rd to officially bring her over. But legally and socially, it is a hidden, illegitimate arrangement that is hanging by a thread.
I really want to ask about Erjie's agency here. We talked about the mother being swayed by money and security. But why does Erjie agree to this? The text isn't exactly kind to her reasoning, is it?
No, it's really not. The source text describes her as, quote, watery.
Watery? That's such an evocative insult. What does that imply in this era?
It implies she's fluid, perhaps lacking a solid moral core or personal resolve. She basically takes the shape of whatever container she's poured into. She regrets the engagement to the poor Zhang Hua because, well, he's poor. She sees Lian, who is wealthy, handsome, clearly showing her affection, and she just wants that life.
She wants to trade up.
Essentially, yes. The text says she had resentment toward her previous engagement because it guaranteed a life of hardship. She sees Lian as a rescue boat. Plus, you have to remember her brother-in-law, Zhen, is the one facilitating it. If the powerful men in her own family say it's okay, she just goes along with it.
Right. It's hard to blame her entirely given the options women actually had back then. It's either crushing poverty or becoming the second chamber of a nobleman. It's not much of a choice.
That's very true. But the ultimate tragedy is that she thinks she is securing her future, but she's actually just walking blindly into a trap set by her own family's greed and Lian's lust.
So she steps into the sedan chair. They have the secret wedding. They think they've pulled off the perfect crime.
They really do. They are celebrating. Lian is described as overjoyed. He thinks he has the absolute best of both worlds. A dutiful, terrifying wife at home, managing the estate, and a beautiful secret mistress stashed in Little Huazi Lane.
But the author doesn't let us get comfortable, does he?
Never. Dream of the Red Chamber is the absolute master of foreshadowing. The chapter wraps up with a couplet that acts as a thematic summary for everything we just read. It says, "Greed for lust causes war."
Greed for lust causes war. That is definitely not subtle.
The translation even mentions spears and shields arising from this specific union. It's a direct, stark warning to the reader. The characters are popping champagne, or wine rather, but the narrator is basically looking right at us, telling us, you have just started a war.
Because you can't build a stable future on a foundation of lies and coercion.
Precisely. Just think about the massive vulnerabilities here. They have a house full of servants. Servants talk. They have a highly resentful ex-fiancé out there somewhere who is just bullied out of his marriage. And most importantly, they have based the entire legitimacy of this arrangement on the lie that Phoenix is going to die soon.
Right. The clock is ticking loudly on that lie.
If Phoenix doesn't die, Erjie remains a secret, hidden away in an alley forever. Or worse, Phoenix actually finds out. And anyone who knows Phoenix knows that is the absolute worst-case scenario.